Hey guys, and welcome back to another episode of the Warwick F1 Show podcast. This is the 40th episode of the 2025 season, and we are back again with another preview episode. We came off the back of a weekend at Monza where we delved into some of the details in the last episode, but we're back again, and this time looking ahead to what we can expect to see at the Azerbaijan Grand Prix. I'm your host for this one, Anwar. I am joined by my co-host Daniel, so thank you for joining me. Let's start with just Baku as a circuit. What should we expect on like a regular type of race here?
That's the thing about Baku. I don't think a regular race really exists. So I was looking into this, and there's a 57% safety car probability at Baku, which sounds about right, really, because half the races are crazy, and the rest are actually pretty tame. The inaugural race was in 2016, which is called the European Grand Prix, or the Misinformation Grand Prix, as I like to call it, because Azerbaijan is geographically in Asia. So that was rather tame, and everyone's like, oh, why have you introduced this rubbish circuit? And then we come to 2017, which is absolutely bananas. We've got a Lance Stroll podium, Ricciardo triple overtake. 2018 was wild as well. We had a Bottas out. Red Bull collisions, but 2019 was pretty boring. So that's two apiece. Come the COVID break, there was no race in 2020. 2021 was nuts. 2022 was pretty meh. The Ferrari pain was funny until, well, that was before it just became kind of sad. 2023 was the worst race of the season, I'm going to say. And yet 2024 was great. So that's kind of four apiece in the Baku brilliant or boring head-to-head. And I guess this is kind of the tie-break. It has the recipe for disaster for some drivers and opportunity for others, if you think about it. Close walls, kind of like, high speeds, kind of like Saudi Arabia and the Jeddah Street Circuit in that respect. But sometimes it doesn't deliver. I'm not sure. Maybe it is about track conditions being correct or just sheer circumstances. But I'm always down to watch a race at Baku simply out of respect for what it's delivered us in the past.
It really has earned its place in the calendar. Like, it might not provide entertainment every Sunday, but you do get your fair share of crashes, incidents, controversy as well. Thinking back to Vettel running into Lewis Hamilton, giving a little love tap on the side. It really has delivered for, I would say, more often than not. And with this in mind, is this really an opportunity for different cars who might not necessarily always be in the top 10 to get their points, a good haul of points here? Is there that opportunity this weekend?
Yeah, I mean, a mainstay of Baku recently, or when it's been on the calendar, has kind of been the story of midfield podiums, to be honest. 2021, we had Seb in his Aston Martin was on the podium. Pierre Gasly was there too in the AlphaTauri. Obviously, like I mentioned, Stroll in that Williams got a podium. So there's definitely opportunity for the teams who are slightly further back, shall we say, in the championship, but also the teams who run up further to the front, because we see in street circuits it's quite common that the dominant force are kind of dethroned because the characteristics are so different that their car that they've built to excel in the high-speed corners can't, because there are none. So from that respect, it's kind of a unique challenge in that way. So perhaps maybe there could be a rogue Ferrari in the mix, which has been the case in previous years, because Charles Leclerc has got 4 consecutive poles in Baku over the past 4 years, which is wildly impressive. I find it quite ironic, actually, that Baku is the lowest lying capital city in the world in terms of elevation, but it's still not as low as Charles Leclerc's pole-to-win conversion ratio on those streets, which is exactly 0. So he'll be hoping to turn that around this weekend, although I'm not entirely hopeful.
Yeah, I mean, that's putting a bit of stock in Ferrari, that is. But yeah, I think let's move on to kind of what we expect to see from the front, because it is obviously an opportunity for some cars towards the middle or near potentially even the back if you're an Alpine to try and snag a few points. But in terms of the main battles up top, we came off the back of Max Verstappen winning in dominant fashion last time out. Really, the McLarens weren't able to challenge him in terms of pace, in terms of strategy. They weren't able to really pose much of a threat. Do you think there is any credence to the idea that Red Bull might be able to replicate the type of performance they got at Monza here in Baku this weekend?
I mean, it's possible. I mean, the downforce requirements in Baku are definitely split because there is one of the longest straights in Formula One history, but you also have a very tight, narrow section. I think the narrowest point of the circuit is about 7 meters wide, which means you need a lot of downforce to get through there in one piece and to carry as much speed as possible, because the low speed corners are naturally in Formula One where you can save or lose a lot of your lap time. So from that respect, the teams are going to want to find a balance on the downforce level. In Monza, you can just whack on the minimum amount possible. And obviously I'm saying this because that Red Bull in the low downforce setup is enormously competitive compared to the rest of the field. But when it puts on the downforce, it doesn't quite work the tyres in the same way. And it can't quite gain that competitive edge. Having said that, Baku is similar to Monza in that there is very little tyre degradation, which is a characteristic that they share, so much so that the Pirelli have decided to bring back the C6 tyre for Baku in kind of an effort to plead the teams to go for a two-stop. They've kind of openly admitted that they just want to try anything they can to provoke that because it leads to more entertainment, obviously. So they're trying to kind of manufacture more entertainment for the fans, which I think is great. I'm not entirely sure it's going to work because there is just that little degradation. I mean, the only energy really that goes through the tyres is vertical on that really long main straight. And we did see that in 2021, of course, with the tyre blowouts for Stroll and Verstappen. So the rest of the track is kind of pretty easy going. So in terms of the tyre degradation advantage that McLaren have, I'm not sure that will be able to stretch its legs properly compared to Verstappen. But, you know, it's always possible that they turn up and spring a surprise. I mean, it is kind of a weird one because this was the only race last year where Perez seemed to be more competitive than Verstappen in the race. It was bizarre, really. It's like they'd switched the cars and we didn't notice because Verstappen was really anonymous. Perez was mixing it up, trying to fight for the podium positions and could possibly have got the win. So it's maybe the only race where I'm thinking the Red Bull might be competitive, but at the same time, can Max extract it? Because he clearly isn't fond of those slow speed 90-degree corners, of which there are many. I don't know. What do you think, Anwar?
I mean, it's definitely an interesting discussion, right? Because Perez has always been very good at that circuit. So I think if there was one circuit where you look at and think, okay, Verstappen might be the most under threat from his teammate, it'd probably be there, right? Now, he doesn't have that kind of benchmark this year. Yuki Tsunoda has not been in the same ballpark, let's be honest, in terms of his performances. But I think the fact that Red Bull was somewhat there or thereabouts last year does give me hope. And I guess you can never bet against Verstappen. You can never count him out. We kind of got that proven to us last time out. So I think it would be naive for us to say that it is unlikely. I personally think that we preface a lot of these preview episodes as McLaren should be the dominant force. I think this is one where stuff is potentially a little bit more even, and we will have I expect once again to have a few more cars in and around those positions at the top of at the sharp end. We saw the Ferraris last year, at least in Leclerc's hands, being somewhat competitive. Could we see the Ferraris show up? That's also another question that we kind of have to ask as well. So I think this is kind of set up very well in terms of we've had a Red Bull win last time out. We've got the narrative of, okay, they might be able to do it again. But I think it is definitely not a case where we know this McLaren is going to win this time because their advantages are nullified. I don't think they've shown a lot in terms of straight line speed. That's never been their strength. That was never this version of the McLaren's advantage. It's been the tyre wear and some of the downforce it's able to create. And I don't think you see a lot of the tyre wear, like you mentioned. It's not a big factor here. So I think it's set up very well for us. I think we're in for a good one, at least into the pace and competitors now, from a competitive standpoint. From an overtaking standpoint, we're going to have to wait and see.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, it does depend as well. I think I said this maybe even in the last preview or the one before, but the wind direction is key. I mean, it gets incredibly windy in Baku. It is called the Land of Fire. No, it's the City of Wind. It is also called the Land of Fire, but the Baku is the City of Wind for a reason. So a headwind into turn one would be simply lovely. Thank you very much. More triple overtakes, side by side for the win in turn number one. Yes, please, would be great. What have we seen in Baku? We've seen. I'm trying to think of classic overtakes. The Ricciardo one, obviously, and
Piastri last year deserves
yes,
a shout as well.
Of course, yes. The dive to the inside. That's what I was trying to think of. The really optimistic move. I remember when I was watching it live, I wasn't sure that he wasn't going to go into the wall after that move, but he managed to pull it off. And as I've said before, that kind of encouraged him to pull off bold moves like that as well, which have been entertaining us ever since because it worked for him. So it's definitely a circuit that rewards the commitment if you're able to find it, but it also it also punishes stupidity, as we saw in the Perez-Sainz incident in the very same race.
It's definitely one where I think we will have a lot of. There's always a big potential for incidents here, just by nature of having the walls where they are, as well as the fact that we do have quite a few pretty prime overtaking spots. Something in turn one's pretty good for it. Turn three as well is another one where I look at and think we've seen a few incidents around there before, particularly first lap incidents as well. So I think there's a lot of jeopardy, is kind of the point I'm getting across in terms of the order, in terms of what could happen. And I think there will be opportunities if there's safety cars for some wacky results. I look at the calendar, I think this is probably where we could have a little bit of a surprise result.
Yeah, I'd say this one and Brazil are probably the most likely candidates to throw up something like that. And don't forget as well, at turn three, I was again trying to remember a notable overtake, and all that could come to mind was the sprint race in 2023 at turn three. Russell and Verstappen came head-to-head there and had a bit of a standoff afterwards in the Parc Fermé area after it was revealed that Russell actually left a hole in Verstappen's sideboard. But I think Verstappen's probably a bit more relaxed about his prospects, shall we say, because at the time Perez was kind of putting a lot of pressure on him, and there was even talk of a championship challenge. So, I think now Max is more resigned to the fact that he's not going to win this one, so he might go a bit easier on anyone who drives into him, as we saw in Austria this year, actually, with Antonelli. It's just kind of, it happens.
Yeah, and to be fair, I don't know how close those Mercs are going to be to the likes of the Red Bull. We don't really know because the Mercedes haven't really shown a lot in terms of pace. You mentioned the fact that we have C6s. You're not expecting that to really play a part, are you? Because, like you mentioned, tyre wear isn't normally a factor. The fact that we brought a C6, do you really foresee any opportunity for someone to try the two-stop?
I won't lie. I thought earlier in the season when the C6 came into force, I thought it's not going to make much of a difference. It's just an extra tyre compound that they've stuck onto the engine. But it was the fact that there was a step difference that made the difference, because they didn't actually run the C6 in the race. They ran the medium and the soft, which were the C4 and the C5, and that was what actually made the difference. So the C6 itself, probably not. They're probably not even going to run it, perhaps, unless there's a safety car at the end. So from that perspective, I'm not expecting it to make much of an appearance, aside from qualifying, of course. But I do think that, like I said, the tyre delta from running the C4 and C5 should be enough to at least encourage some overtaking, because you will be able to, frankly, because someone's tyres will be dying while someone else is pitted and they'll be able to overtake. So perhaps it's a bit too much of a stretch to ask for a two-stop from those tyres, but I guess we'll have to wait and see. It's uncharted territory at the end of the day. So that's what I'm trying to say is I have no clue, Anwar.
Look, I like the preamble, and then we got to the fact that there's ultimately no way of us knowing because we've never seen this type of thing before at Baku. I think it's the type of thing where we'll just have to look at it with great interest and see what happens. So weather might play a part in this. It's time for me to give you a little bit of a weather update. We've never had a wet race here at Baku, and there are murmurs that there is a possibility of this happening. Not a very high probability, but it's in and around the area over the course of 3 days, with precipitation rates of around 10 to 30%, depending on what time and what day you're looking. So it's going to be in and around the area for rain. We've never seen a wet race in Baku. Would a wet race in Baku, Daniel, be like the epitome of chaos?
It would fulfill all of my dreams and more, Anwar. I think a wet race in Baku would rival any place for chaos in a wet race, frankly. I mean, we've seen even Sao Paulo's crazy when it's raining, and the walls aren't even that close in Brazil. So to think, I know that the cars aren't exactly on the edge in some of the corners in Baku, and that would probably reduce the number of mistakes because they are running at quite slow speed. But at the same time, lockups are quite easy in wet conditions because the tyres aren't up to temperature due to the colder conditions. So, it's less likely that the car will be able to rotate the tyres. And then even the hint of a smallest lockup in the castle section, ask Charles Leclerc from 6 years ago, could be the end of your session. So I think in that case we could have possibly even the first red flag of the season, maybe in a Grand Prix, because we haven't had one yet. I think the race director is probably quite hesitant to do it. We haven't had a season free from red flags in a long time, I think, in the races. But we're at the 2/3 stage now, and maybe it's not going to happen. But if
and it's even more impressive in such a long season as well. It's like the more races, the more opportunities to have a red flag. Yet they haven't turned up, have they?
Exactly. Yeah, much to your dismay, I'm sure, because that was your random prediction for Monza, I'm pretty sure. And I listened to that on the podcast. I was like, that is a very bold random prediction, Anwar. But it could come in this weekend, higher probability than most, I'm sure.
Yeah, I mean, if it gets me prediction points, it gets me prediction points. I'm a happy man. Let's move on to just discuss it. We talked about just some of the fights up front. Do we expect it to be McLaren versus Ferrari versus Red Bull? Do we think it's going to be a three-way fight in your eyes between those three constructors?
I think the main battle is going to be Piastri versus the McLaren pit wall, actually, and some of the decisions that are going to be made. That battle.
Yeah, I mean, that's a season-long battle.
It is probably the hardest fought out there. Like I said before, it's hard to know. McLaren were really competitive at the circuit last year, of course. Probably shouldn't have won it, but Piastri ensured that they did, and it led to possibly the greatest shot of the season, which is Piastri coming out of the last real corner on the racetrack, kind of getting a little bit of oversteer, the rear kind of spinning out on him, catching it, and then Charles Leclerc comes in behind with exactly the same thing, which was brilliant camera work. But I'm probably expecting a bit more of a gap between them this time, but it's not easy to tell, so we're just going to have to sit in there and see, I guess.
It might also be dependent on track temperature as well. I think if we have a track temperature that's a little bit higher, I think that plays into McLaren's hands more so than anyone else. Because we have seen, I guess, the gap between those, the McLarens and the other cars kind of diminish in some different conditions. I'm thinking back to Canada, where it wasn't as hot as it normally was, a little bit cooler. And in those cooler conditions, we saw a Mercedes really come to prominence. If that plays a role again, might we see another constructor? Who knows? Gonna have to wait and see. In terms of some drivers that I want to spotlight ahead of this weekend, I think the first one we should probably talk about is the second Red Bull seat in Yuki Tsunoda. As the paddock always talks, the paddock is a very constant gossip circus, I guess. And in the gossip that's coming out is that Isaac Hadjar is probably the favourite to get that second Red Bull seat. And and Yuki Tsunoda's overall future in the sport is under threat, as he is apparently competing against Liam Lawson for a seat in the RB. Now, how important is it for, under this kind of backdrop and background, for him to put in a performance that is warranting of a seat on the Formula One grid? Now we're not saying this is we're expecting to finish third, but would something like a 7th place do wonders for his confidence and potentially his chances at staying in the sport?
For Yuki Tsunoda, you mean?
Yeah, Yuki Tsunoda in 7th.
Yes. Wow. The last time he finished as high as 7th was a very long time ago. I can tell you that for free. And I think it would do wonders. He has said before that he's not low on confidence in the car. However, when you look at him driving the car, you can't see how anyone isn't low on confidence when they're driving that beast, except Max Verstappen, of course. So, it stands to reason that Yuki Tsunoda is in a pretty tough position. But surely Red Bull aren't so short-sighted that, or as recency-minded, that they discard Yuki Tsunoda from their driving program altogether, because he was carrying the junior team year after year, and he proved that he is a very high caliber driver. And yes, he's had a hard time, but who hasn't? So I don't think it's fair. I know that the concept of fairness has come under a lot of scrutiny recently, given McLaren's antics, but I think in this case, to dismiss him altogether, because last time out in Monza, Lauren McKeith wasn't denying the kind of rumours that Yuki Tsunoda might find himself in neither of the Red Bull teams, which would be a real shame, because he's kind of been a stalwart for that team, and he's almost given up many years of his career in pursuit of the Red Bull team. So to drop him like this when he's been so loyal, he hasn't come out in the media and screaming and throwing his toys out the pram. He has been very diplomatic despite his difficulties, and I think that needs to be a bit more rewarded than dropping him entirely. But at the same time, it is, it's a results-based business, and the results aren't coming in. So, it's the Piranha Club incarnate. So what can you do, really? I think it's harsh, but there are drivers out there who could probably have the potential to grow into a position where they gain more points for Red Bull than Yuki Tsunoda currently is.
I think that's the kind of key word. I'm glad that you said it, was the fact that it's potential. There is no guarantee that Hadjar goes into that seat, because that is what it's looking like. And honestly, given his performances, probably is warranted, as much as we as fans probably look and think, oh, don't go and ruin your career at Red Bull. Ultimately, you want to try and be in the best car. And I think, given his performances this season, he's been probably definitely the most impressive rookie out of the 6 that we have on the grid. And by virtue of his performances, he should be in that Red Bull seat if we're going on pure merit. It's just, has Yuki Tsunoda done badly enough for it warrant getting completely rid of him? Because I felt that I feel like I'm the type of person to kind of ignore his struggles in Red Bull, because we've seen competent drivers struggle there as well. I think that Yuki has also given them a lot of faith as well, because, like you mentioned, he's been in pursuit of this seat at Red Bull for quite a while. He said it in media a couple of times. He would like to have that opportunity to step up. And maybe he has the feeling of, maybe in hindsight, I probably should have moved outside of the stable of Red Bull and gone to another team if there was an opportunity to. Because I feel that he probably had enough stock for him to do that at the end of last year, because I think he had an impressive last year. He's been overall had an impressive last 2 years. So I think he had the opportunities maybe to move, or maybe not aware to the public, but potentially had some internal or private discussions about potential moves. I look at it and think, would he have succeeded better or had a more comfortable career if he moved outside of Red Bull? But that's kind of the gambit that he was given, and that was the decision he made, and he might end up paying for it. So it's going to be very important for him to perform over the next few, not just here in Baku, but for the rest of the season, because by the sounds of things, his future is on the line. The other side of that coin is Liam Lawson, who has had a very he's had a very up and down season. It's kind of worked in the opposite way to Yuki, hasn't it, Daniel? He struggled at the start, and now he's beginning to come back to the Liam Lawson that we'd seen in the years prior, where he made a few of those stand-in appearances. I guess, does he need to continue what he's doing? If he continues what he's doing, I guess, does he keep that seat in the RB, in your eyes?
Yeah, it seems like Liam Lawson's been to Red Bull Drivers Anonymous recovery group and has kind of gathered himself back up after the disappointment and put in many good showings, really, to be honest. So from that side, he's certainly in a stronger position to keep the seat than Yuki Tsunoda, I'd say, just from a recent point of view. When they were together as teammates, it's hard to compare because Lawson was very fresh-faced and Tsunoda was, he had a couple of seasons of experience under his belt. But Lawson, it did seem like he had slightly more potential than Yuki Tsunoda, perhaps, which is possibly why Red Bull decided to promote him instead of Yuki Tsunoda. Obviously, I'm suspecting that Lawson would have the struggles he did. But then again, why have a driver in your junior team who can't cut it in the senior team? Because that's the dynamic that we have. Racing Bulls is the junior and designed for prospective Red Bull drivers. So isn't it kind of a waste of a seat if there was a driver who's had his chance and is very likely not going to go back into the seat, but you're still fielding him there anyway? There's that discussion to be had, I suppose. But then, who do you bring in there? If, for example, Lindblad comes in, you could then apply the same logic to Yuki Tsunoda and say, well, he's had his chance. He can't be in the junior team either. So in that case, Red Bull would be hemorrhaging their drivers. So it's a tough decision to make. I think they need to be consistent in their reasoning, which is going to be tough. But the decision needs to make sense for them at the end of the day. Lauren McKees, we don't know how he operates compared to Christian Horner, but I assume we're going to find out soon whether he's going to rule with the same authority and reactiveness.
Yeah, I think this decision will tell us a lot about how McKees wants to run this team, and whether there is still input from other people as well. I think that is another question we probably need to ask. Once that decision comes to play, but we'll see how that plays out. There's another driver I want to spotlight before we move into some of the predictions and some of the other discussion that we want to have, and that is a driver who's been struggling recently. He came into the season with a lot of discussion, a lot of hype, and he kind of started off with a bang. But over the European segment of the season, he's made a series of errors and really hasn't found the type of form that his teammate George Russell is, and that's Kimi Antonelli. He's obviously going through a rough time. Jacques Villeneuve was saying that he wasn't ready for Formula One. I've seen Gunther Steiner say that he probably deserves a demotion to a Williams or another team, which I think both of them are kind of incredible statements to be made from people. I find them ridiculous. I don't know where you stand on it, Daniel. How do you assess his struggles so far this season?
Well, to put it bluntly, I think Jacques Villeneuve has all the self-confidence of a Nico Rosberg, but just with much worse, horrible takes. Because
charisma and less charisma.
Less charisma too, yeah, that's a point. But he carries it off well, and that's kind of got him into punditry. And he delivers some fair points, but I don't think this is one. I think Kimi Antonelli, yes, possibly you could make an argument that he wasn't ready for the senior team. Toto Wolff himself has said that Kimi Antonelli wasn't performing as they expected him to. And that's led to them, making some reconsiderations. What would we have done if we could jump in a time machine and go back a year? But, you can't do that at the end of the day. And if Mercedes didn't want to field Kimi Antonelli for next year. I think Kimi Antonelli would probably struggle to find a team who'd accommodate him. I know he's kind of hot property, but I think a lot of teams are happy with their current driver lineups. And also time's kind of getting on. We haven't properly got into the swing of silly season yet, but it looks to be that we're going to have a lot of driver retention, if you will, across teams, just like from 23 to 24, we had the same grid with the same teams from the end of the season to the beginning of the next one. So, a decision does need to be made. I suspect that they will retain him, but they're just waiting for him to pick up the form a little bit so they have an excuse to sign him again. Because, Canada wasn't that long ago. It was the 1st of June, but it proved that he does have the flashes in him, the flashes of pace, the flashes of brilliance. And that is, for me, that's what a rookie needs to do. So from that perspective, Jacques Villeneuve is wrong in that he can't cut it in Formula One because he's 19. And I think that's quite an unfair thing to say. Someone who's, just started and has had a rough patch. I don't know. What do you think, Anwar? I'm really struggling with this one.
I personally think that some of the discourse about it's a bit ridiculous. I think the fact that people already think that he's not worthy of a spot in Formula One next year is crazy talk to me. I think you sign someone like Antonelli with the knowledge that he will have rough patches, as many rookies do. I think even like the likes of Leclerc, if you remember, his first 5 or 6 races in the sport weren't very good. He didn't really show a lot. I think Ericsson had the better of him for the first 6 races when he came into the sport, which is, when you look back at it now, is not reflective of where Leclerc and Ericsson are respectively in their careers. So the first season is always supposed to be an adaptation one. As long as you see, in my eyes, as long as you show glimpses of your potential, you kind of have a free pass. Particularly when Merck have spent a lot of money on him and invested a lot of their resources into developing him to become this next Verstappen. I don't think you give up on him so quickly. Even Logan Sargent, who, let's be honest, isn't on a caliber talent, isn't a talent on the same caliber as Kimi Antonelli. It doesn't have the same extensive record in terms of success in junior formula. He was also given a season in spite of his struggles too. He was given the full season, was retained, and then once they saw no development in the second season, that's when they got rid. So there is this general, as teams, they have to back their driver, particularly if they've come from their own academy. So I don't see any threat to his seat at all. I think he has a slump, and drivers do have slumps from time to time. You see it it's not an F1 exclusive thing. They have it in sport as well, for other sports, football, for example. And it's just part of the game. So you kind of take the good with the bad. It was the kind of the message when you're dealing with rookies who are finding their feet, but have expansive potential that could generate success longer term. So I think, yes, you just need to try and get out of the slump, which is easier said than done, sure. But I think we should be a lot more patient as fans. But do you think that is just the very nature of sport has that type of impatience attached to it?
Yeah, of course. But the issue is that you're taking the good with the very bad. I know that progress isn't linear, but he did finish 4th in his first race and then slump pretty much ever since the second race in China when he finished 6th, with the exception of Canada. And crucially, he has been overtaken by Alex Albon in the driver's standings. And that's a Williams. And for a Works Mercedes driver to be overtaken by a Williams in the driver's standings, I think that's borderline embarrassing for Mercedes. That's the issue that I have, is the image that it's kind of portraying. And if they keep him on again, will it continue? I don't know. I do agree that they should give him a contract renewal for next year, because like I said, progress isn't linear, and the peaks and the troughs, albeit there are more troughs at the moment, I'm sure the peaks are in there somewhere.
I mean, I think the counterpoint to your, I guess, argument is the fact that Merck are already behind one Mercedes supplied car in McLaren. It's a case of you're going to have a Williams there, and I think the more important factor is the fact that they keep the position in constructors, because that's ultimately the thing that generates the constructor the money. That's what they get their paychecks for, I guess. So unless, I guess, if they were under threat in the constructors by Williams, I think it's a different story entirely. I think it's a different challenge and different prospect because the financial aspects of it. But I don't think they're financially under threat, because I don't think their position in the constructors is really under threat from anyone that isn't the top three teams that are standardly going to be there. I think that they will eventually make the right decision in keeping him on. I don't see Toto Wolff the type of person who will give up on a driver. I don't think he's that reactive. I think he will end up deciding, okay, we're going to continue with him. But I think discussions might need to be had if this form does continue. I think that's just the last point, because like you are saying, his slump isn't good. It's not like a short-term thing. You mentioned Canada. Canada was in mid-June. We're in mid-September now. That's a long distance of time, right? So hopefully for his sake, he does pull it together and come back with a points finish. Where would be like a suitable, what would give you confidence, I guess, for him?
I mean, a top 5 would be a stunning result for Kimi Antonelli nowadays. But just looking at his previous races, we had a 9th in Italy and a 10th in Hungary. So I guess any higher than that would be counted as progress. He got back-to-back 6th positions all the way back in Saudi and Miami. So anything around that area, 5th, 6th, 7th, would be a sign that, he is getting the points on the board. Maybe retake that position from Albon would be enough to give him a vote of confidence there.
Yeah, I mean, I was thinking the same region of 6th would be a good result for him. I think that would probably give him a little bit more confidence. And confidence is like the second half of the battle there. It could be technique based, but also confidence is a big thing. So I think that's also, and I think confidence is something that plays into your head a little bit more if you are a younger driver as well. So there are a few things, just a few different aspects to think about. There's as much as we kind of need to go into detail in terms of some of the preamble into what we expect to see. I think it's time for our prediction segment, don't you think, Daniel?
Yeah, I'm ready. Let's do it.
Let's get into the thick of things, shall we? So, Daniel, do you want to go first, seeing it is out of us two? Lucy does have her predictions that we will go through on her behalf. So we've got 3 sets of predictions to go through. Daniel, why don't you kick us off then?
Okay. Right, let's go. Pole position will once again be Charles Leclerc, because 4 in a row, how could you bet against him making it 5? 2021 and 2023 come to mind when he scored a pole position against a dominant car in Baku, so that will happen again. But it's going to be Max Verstappen who will win the Azerbaijan Grand Prix, because sometimes great drivers in slightly slower cars do it back-to-back, just randomly, just win 2 races in a row, and that's what Verstappen's going to do this weekend. Charles Leclerc will be P2. I'm kind of picturing some DRS tactics in this race. Maybe
it's like a mini game, I guess.
Yeah, maybe. DRS mini games. Max kind of gets ahead of Charles and then keeps him in his DRS behind the whole race, so that the McLarens, who are faster, can't get past either of them, because they form like a little DRS train, a la Sainz, Singapore 2023. That would be pretty cool to see. And then in P3, we're going to have a frustrated Oscar Piastri, but who still increases his championship lead. And P4 will be Lando Norris. And we haven't actually mentioned this, but we probably should, given that it's pretty big, which is that McLaren are able to seal the Constructors' Championship this weekend should they outscore Ferrari by 9 points and not be outscored by Mercedes and Red Bull by ridiculous numbers, which they won't be because they have middle season. So McLaren definitely have the potential to break records, in that it would be the 7 races to go until the end of the season that they'd seal their constructors. So that would be incredibly early for them.
It just speaks to how competitive they've been all season. They really haven't, like, even in race weekends where they haven't been there at the top, they've still been in and around the podium positions, which is incredibly impressive. And for a team that have really seen the worst, I'm thinking back to the McLaren Honda Alonso era. I'm personally very happy. I think that's a very cool development for them. So 2 constructors championships in a row by the sounds of things.
Yep, I'm happy for them, and yet it seems like they're dropping the ball every weekend. Anyway, P5.
They're doing their best to throw it away, but no one's stepping up to the plate.
They're trying to throw away the drivers for both drivers, but win the constructors by a mile, which is exactly what they're doing somehow. P5 will be George Russell. Actually, I was looking into driver of the day the other day because I kind of forgot about it, and it's been kind of irrelevant. But George Russell's the only driver in the top 4 teams who hasn't won a driver of the day vote because everyone just expects him to kind of finish on the podium. And the one race that he won, his rookie teammate had a first-time podium, so it kind of just went under the radar. So, I think we should exercise our democratic privileges to elect George Russell our driver of the day this weekend. But I've said my piece. That's my poll in top 5. What about you or Lucy?
Right, let me go through mine next, and then I'll give you Lucy's at the end. I think your and Lucy's one aren't too dissimilar. There is a little bit of difference as you go further down. Right, so from my perspective, I'm saying Leclerc won't get pole, but I think Ferrari will get pole.
No
I've
way.
said Lewis Hamilton
Really?
is going on pole, which is a crazy thing to say, but I just think I can see it. I just can see it. There is no other justification. I can see. I'm seeing it. I'm looking into Saturday through like an hourglass, and I'm seeing it happen. So I'm saying Lewis Hamilton to get on pole, but I don't. No comment. But I will say that I don't think that he is going to win, because I think that it will be Oscar Piastri who wins the race. And once again, extends his championship advantage, which was already 31 points. I have gone for, and unfortunately for Norris, I've gone for Verstappen in second. I just think that the Red Bulls will be there or thereabouts here. I think at least in his hands, he will do his utmost best, like he does every weekend, to try and pull his car up there. And I think he will. I think the fact that down the straights is my big justification, is the fact that the Red Bull seems like it has the legs in a straight line compared to the McLaren. So I think if Norris, let's say, has a bad start and falls behind Verstappen, it'll be a pretty difficult job for him to get back in front this specific track. So I've gone Verstappen P2, I've gone Norris P3, I've gone Hamilton P4. And I have gone for a surprise P5. So we've been prefacing and talking about the fact that there could be a bit of chaos, a little bit of incidents here and there. And that is why I have gone for a very interesting P5 of Pierre Gasly.
Oh, that's funny.
Do you like it?
Because, no, I don't know. I don't.
Funny in a good way or a bad way? I'm intrigued.
Funny, bizarre, I think. It's more
okay.
Like it. Just because I don't think they're going to have much, in terms of tracks with long straights, you think of Monza and you think of Azerbaijan, and I'm just thinking about the fact that Alpine were 2 of the last 3 finishes in the last race, and I just have no confidence in them. But if there really is some chaos, I think Pierre Gasly does well enough around Baku to put himself in a position where he can capitalise.
Maybe a sprinkling of some rain, a safety car perhaps. That's what I'm seeing.
I've always considered Pierre Gasly to be an underrated wet weather driver, so I am happy to fall for it.
Okay. At least I've got someone not necessarily buying in, but open to my idea of a Pierre Gasly P5. Let's go through Lucy's poll and P1 to 5. She's gone Leclerc, so she's matched you there to win. And then she says that Norris will be the one who wins the Grand Prix. Continuing a theme of different winners is her kind of brackets that we've got over here. And I think that would be good for the championship if it does play out that way. She's got Leclerc falling from pole to second, which is still a great result for a Ferrari team that haven't really had amazing results this season, to be honest. It's been very underwhelming considering the amount of expectation they've had. She's also said Piastri P3, so Norris would take a 10-point swing and reduce the deficit from 31 to 21 points. She's then said Verstappen P4, followed in P5 by Gabriele Bortoleto. So another prediction where there is a little bit of excitement, a little bit of a curveball, which, I can get on board with. And Bortoleto's form recently has been pretty good as well. So I think that's another thing that plays into his favour. I remember that we were having discussions a while back about the fact that he needed to get results quickly, and he's just been able to hammer out quite a few good results since. So good for him that he's found his feet, and I said at the start when he came in, he's the best rookie in my eyes. I don't think he's the best rookie because I think Hadjar takes that title, but he's probably the second best rookie. Daniel, let's go through DNFs, shall we? What have you said for your DNF and random prediction?
All right, I didn't want to spoil it, but this is why I said that your P5 prediction was pretty funny, because I have predicted Pierre Gasly to DNF. Yeah, pretty much. Just because I saw his last DNFs came in Saudi and in Monaco this year, and there's kind of a trend in those circuits that I'm kind of hopping on and thinking it will continue over to Baku. High speed, close walls. So maybe he'll get shown a wall by another driver. Maybe his underpowered and overworked Renault engine will blow up like, I don't know, the Bastille on a Parisian summer's day in that year, 1789 or whatever. So maybe he'll...
It's not a Warwick F1 show without a historical reference, is it?
Yeah, exactly. Maybe he'll experience his ancestors' fury at the, his engine blowing up. I don't know. Random prediction. I've gone kind of left field with this one. I put both Lucy and Anwar score fewer than 4 points in their predictions.
Right, so
you guys. I'm sorry. Your wheel knowledge.
We've gone from random predictions about the sport to random predictions about predictions, and you know what? I'm completely on board with that because I'm completely on board. I don't like the fact that you've looped me in with Lucy because I think that's unfair.
Well, I thought it would be unfair to just do one of you, so I thought I'd even out a bit.
You're sharing out the bullying between the two of us.
Yeah. Exactly.
You know what? For equality's sake, that's respect. At least you're treating us equally. To get less than 4 points. Are we including 4? Because I've got to make that clear.
No, it'll be less than 4 because.
Okay.
Yeah, it will be less than 4.
All right. Is there any punishment? I think this is because it's a personal one. I think there should be a punishment if this doesn't come through.
If it doesn't come in. I don't know. I'll probably
a public apology.
I won't publicly apologise. My ego's too big for that. But I will declare on the Warwick F1 show that Lance Stroll is the greatest Formula One driver and the team leader of Aston Martin Formula One team.
You know what? And that's good enough for me. I don't. It probably is good enough for Lucy as well. So we'll take that. Let me go through my DNF. So we'll take that. Both Lucy and I to get less than 4 points in our predictions, which. We've never seen that prediction before, but we're breaking boundaries like we're a very innovative podcast. My DNF for this weekend, I've gone with Charles Leclerc. So it's either pole and a second place finish or a DNF from us three. No reason except Leclerc. I'm stupid. I'm just feeling it, to be honest. And my random prediction for this one will be the fact that we're going to have 14 cars finish the race.
What? Exactly 14?
I've said exactly 14.
Why have you hamstrung yourself like that? Really? Okay.
What would you say? A range would be more suitable?
No, I'd say actually stick with exactly 14, so it's more likely that you get fewer than 4 points. Well done. Thanks for helping my random prediction, Anwar. Although I did just realise,
Yeah.
I said Lucy's going to get fewer than 4 points, but we've put exactly the same.
Very
second and
similar
third.
prediction. So
Yeah,
you've cooked yourself. So
I know.
yeah, maybe look at your own stable before looking at other people's. You know what I mean?
I'm going to have to look in the mirror and have a word with myself, aren't I? I haven't thought that one through. Damn it. Oh
You
well.
stitched yourself up there.
I'll bite the bullet on this one.
We'll finish with Lucy's random prediction in DNF. She said Antonelli, so not escaping the suffering. And then she's also said at least 2 full safety cars, which out of the 3 random predictions is probably the most likely to come through on the basis of Baku being Baku. So I think Lucy's in a good place for that random prediction, actually. But that brings us to the end of a pretty expensive review, expensive preview episode for the upcoming Azerbaijan Grand Prix at the Baku circuit. I want to thank my guest, Daniel, for my co-host, not a guest, Daniel, for coming on alongside me for this one. And we'll be back at some point next week to deliver the review of a Grand Prix that hopefully entertains us as much as we expect. I've been your host, Anwar, and we'll see you in the next episode. Goodbye.